Hello everyone. My name is Elise. Welcome to my channel. We are doing a belated but still on time WIT month video, aka Women in Translation Month. This one, like the title suggests, is going to be all of the women in translation that are currently on my TBR. Just so you know, there will be another WIT month video coming out in September. My laptop broke for over a week and I'm very behind on the videos that were supposed to come out. I had them all filmed, but I wasn't able to edit them. So now I can actually edit them and upload them. So when you see another WIT month video coming out in September, let's just go with it. Let's just go with it. That also means that a couple other videos like my wrap up are going to be delayed a little bit, but you know, we're doing it. It'll be fine. So let's go over the books that are currently on my TBR that are written and translated into English by women. One caveat is if the books are about to be featured in my September TBR, I'm not including them here because they're going to come out in the very next video. And then also any that I'm going to be including in my wrap up for August, I'm not including as well because they will also be in a very upcoming video. So those are the only ones that I didn't include. Otherwise, let's go ahead and get into these books because I think there are a lot. There are well over 20. So first up, we have Earthlings by Sayaka Murata. This is translated from the Japanese by, what is her name? It's on the tip of my tongue. Ginny Tapley Takamori, and it's published by Grove Press. I did read Convenience Store Woman, which is written by the same author, and I really enjoyed it, which is why I picked this up. This is her second novel. There has also been a short story collection since then as well. And this is basically a story about a young girl who feels very out of place in the world, similarly to Convenience Store Woman, and feels like she doesn't belong in her family or really anywhere, but she does have two good friends. One in an inanimate object, which is a plushie that she is very affectionate towards, and then also with her cousin Yu. So Yu and her, when they're young, something happens. It doesn't say in the blurb, but there's like some type of event that happens, and they decide to make a pact with each other that they will just both survive. Their only goal is to survive, and they decide to promise that to each other. But then we flash forward to when our narrator is older and things are happening, again, we don't know what, that are making her question whether or not she can hold up her end of the bargain and survive. So it's pretty vague, but I know something crazy happens plot-wise in this. Everyone has alluded to that. So I think we're supposed to go in a little bit blind, but that is Earthlings by Sayaka Murata. Next up, we have 3 books from Open Letter that are published as a part of a triptych, and these will be in my Open Letter Publisher Taste Test that will be happening later in the year. They started doing these triptychs in 2022, so last year. This was the first one they ever did, and basically what this is they allow a single translator, in this case Katie Whitmore, to pick 3 things that they would like to be translated for that year. I think that's such a cool concept. They also have a triptych for 2023, but this is the first triptych that they ever did, all translated from the Spanish by Katie Whitmore. So first up, we have Mothers Don't. This is by Katia Aguirre, translated by Katie Whitmore. I'm not going to say that for all of them. That'll be the last time I say it. So this one follows a soon-to-be mother that is also a journalist and a writer, and she becomes increasingly obsessed with a story in the news that's just come out about a different mother who is accused of killing her twin children. Now, once the journalist has their baby, they have a son, they go on a leave, and it's not to take care of the baby or anything like that. It's to deep dive into this news story that is currently happening. I think sort of under the guise of doing a journalistic piece about it, but it's really because she's becoming infatuated with this news story and this other mother. So I think that sounds very intriguing. I'm interested to see what it has to say about motherhood, but that is Mothers Don't. Next up, we have Bad Handwriting. This is by Sarah Mesa, and it is a short story collection. This has 11 short stories in it that I think this is not confirmed, but based on what it says in the back, I think might all be from child narrators. It says it's following, or it's talking about themes of childhood and adolescence, but also following guilt and redemption, power and freedom. So those are the themes running around in here, and the stories include one about a group of kids who are trying to like rebel an authoritative figure, one about a group of girls who are alienated, and so on and so forth. It doesn't give specifics, but they all seem to include children in some way. So yeah, I think this is going to be about kind of like messy and disturbing parts of life, particularly around childhood and adolescence. So that is Bad Handwriting. So this one is following Sophia, who is like a mid-30s narrator. Her husband has just left her, her father recently died, and her mother has just moved to the Canary Islands with a new partner. So she feels very alone and isolated. So she decides to take her young son and move into her late father's house. And then her sister, who she has an uneasy relationship with, decides to join her in the late father's house. So they're all kind of living together for the first time in a very long time. And I think the sisters, now that they're living together, are sort of like forced to face things that happened in their childhood. So yeah, this sounds very intriguing to me. And I'm curious to see what it has to say about sisterly bonds. I like things about siblings. Yeah, this one sounds pretty interesting to me. I also like the uncovering of family secrets. So we'll see what Wolfskin is about. Next up, we have a nonfiction, and that is Consent by Vanessa Springora. This is translated from the French by Natasha Lehrer and published by Harper Via. This is the author's memoir, basically about being groomed by a very famous French writer. And yeah, I think that's really all I need to say about this. If you haven't already heard of it, that's sort of what you need to know. This is her kind of claiming her voice back, because the French writer very publicly was known to be grooming young girls and nobody really did anything about it. So she's finally getting to tell the story from her perspective. And yeah, talk about consent. So that is that one. Next up, we have another nonfiction, and that is This Is Not Miami by Fernanda Melchor. This is a collection of essays translated from the Spanish by Sophie Hughes. And this one is all about kind of the seedy underbelly of Veracruz, which is where Fernanda Melchor is from. I think this has a lot to do with like crime and who can be labeled as a monster or not, and maybe the blurring of those lines, and it might not be as clear as we seem. So that is This Is Not Miami. Next up, we have Breasts and Eggs by Miko Kawakami. This is translated from the Japanese by, translated from the Japanese by Sam Bett and David Boyd, and this is published by Europa Editions. This is a well-known novel, and I've had it for a while now. So it follows two sisters, and I believe one of the sisters is struggling with body image. I'm not sure if they have body dysmorphia or what it is, around their breasts, I believe, hence the title Breasts and Eggs. And then the other sister, I think, also has something going on, but I can't quite remember, and it doesn't say on the back. But she's a writer, and she's dealing with like some family secrets coming out and some anxieties that are happening. And then she also has a young daughter who has stopped talking, and they're not really sure why. So I think it's following all three of these women. And yeah, I've heard that it's powerful and painful, but very good. So that is Breasts and Eggs. Next, we have Kim Ji-young, born 1982. This is by Chu Nam-ju, and it's translated by Jamie Chang from the Korean. This one is published by Liverlight. This is one of my 5-star predictions, my backlist 5-star predictions, so I will hopefully be getting to it sometime this year. And it's also very beloved. This is set in modern day Korea, and it's following a woman's experience of all the misogyny that she has to deal with on a daily basis. I know this also has footnotes down in the bottom in certain sections to give some historical context and like factual evidence to support what she's saying in the book as a narrator. And yeah, I think it's going to be fantastic and hard-hitting and probably very, very relevant. So that is Kim Ji-young, born 1982. Trying to race through these so this video isn't super long. Next, we have Fieldwork in Ukrainian Sex by Oksana Zabuchko, translated from the Ukrainian by Helena Hearn. And this one I talked about recently, I think in a book called Revisit. And the blurb has always been very elusive, so I really don't have any idea what this is about, other than the fact that like it was the WIT month pick for last year for the readathon. And I think the narrator, it's like kind of stream of conscious, kind of not. Yeah, I really know nothing about this, so I'm not helping you at all. I'm so sorry. But there's like nothing on the back. It literally just says, it was steeped in controversy at the time that it came out, and it's one of the most successful Ukrainian language books ever to be published. That's all it says. So that's that one. Next up, we have Abyss by Pilar Quintana, and it's translated from the Spanish by Lisa Dillman. And it's published by One World Editions. And this follows a child narrator. She's 8 years old, and she's trying to see the world through the eyes of the adults around her, mainly her parents. But all of this is sort of thrown into chaos when it says an interloper arrives who disturbs the delicate balance of the family life, and Claudia's world starts to fall apart. So that is Abyss. Next, we have Cold Nights of Neighborhood. This is by Taser Azlu, and it's translated by Maureen Freely. I believe this is translated from the Turkish. Yes, this is translated from the Turkish, and it's published by Transit Books. I love this cover. And it says that this novel's narrator is between lovers and also between psychiatric wards, which I think is such a great opening for a blurb. And she has been forced to go under electroshock treatments. And I think this follows her life over time. I'm not sure if it's shown in flashbacks or not, but I think it's about her trying to find freedom and happiness and love. I'm about that. That sounds great to me. So that is Cold Nights of Childhood. And then next we have The Heart by Melissa de Caringal. This is translated from the French by Sam Taylor, and this one is published by Picador. This one is also pretty beloved. It was a big release when it came out, and this one follows a group of 3 boys who go surfing one morning and are driving back, but they're very fatigued while they're driving, and they end up getting in a car accident. 2 of the boys were wearing seatbelts and are fine. One was not and ends up going through the windshield and now needs a heart transplant, hence the title. So it's following the 24-hour period in which he needs a heart transplant. And I think it's talking about like humanity and life and kind of big philosophical questions like that. And I very much enjoy those kind of big questions about humanity and what it means to be human and to have a good and fulfilling life. So yeah, I'm thinking that this will be something that I really love, but yeah, we shall see. We shall see. That is The Heart. Next up, we have a short story collection called Panics by Barbara Molinard. This is translated by Emma Ramadan, and it's translated from the French. It's published by the Feminist Press. And this one is short stories all about different panics. So each short story has a different thing, like panic, that it is centering. So for example, it could be like sickness or death or control. There's one where a woman becomes transfixed by a boa constrictor at her local zoo. There's one where a mysterious surgeon dismembers their patient, and on and on and on. I'm planning to read this in the month of October. It sounds perfect for that. And I think this is talking about themes of mental illness and bodily autonomy. So very interested in Panics. Next up, we have In Memory of Memory. This is by Maria Stepanova, and it's translated by Sasha Dugdale. I'm pretty sure this is translated from the Russian, but I don't know for sure. But this one, I think, was nominated for the International Booker one year. And the narrator we're following has just had their aunt pass away, and they are going through their aunt's things, kind of like old photographs, postcards, all that type of stuff, letters, diaries. And I think she starts to uncover just how much her family has been persecuted over the years and is trying to kind of focus on their resilience over time. So I've heard great things about this. It is a pretty thick one, but that is In Memory of Memory. Next, we have a more recent procurement, and that is Fresh Dirt from the Grave. This is by Giovanna Rivero, and it's translated from the Spanish by Isabel Addy, and it's published by Charco Press. This is also a short story collection that I might also put on my October TBR, although I do have a decent amount of short story collections I'm going to be putting on there. And this one is following where terrors meet, so like the intersection of terror. And it says shipwreck spirits, mystic rituals, and medical trials. This is where contemporary horrors and ancient terrors meet. That sounds so intriguing. I'm very excited to get to this at some point. All right, need to push this stack to the side and grab this one over. Okay, next up we have these, which have been seen a million times because I keep avoiding finishing my And Other Stories publisher taste test video, but these are two of the books in that video. First one being Permafrost by Eva Baltazar. This is translated from the Catalan by Julia Sanchez and published by And Other Stories. You can see I have a bookmark in it because I have started this. And this one is following an unnamed narrator, and it says the narrator is a no bullshit lesbian who is an uninhibited lover of a wickedly funny observer of modern life. And this follows the narrator just wandering around, reflecting about their life. The narrator is pretty pessimistic in tone, at least so far, but yeah, it's just a very thinky, like her thinking about life type of book. So that is Permafrost. And next we have Old Lady Voice. This is by Elisa Victoria, and it's translated by Charlotte Whittle from the Spanish, I believe. Yes. And again, published by And Other Stories. And this follows Marina, who is spending the summer with her grandmother, and she's basically waiting to hear if she's going to be able to go home or if her parents are like abandoning her and she's going to have to go off to a boarding school or a convent school or something like that. And I think it's trying to have her kind of be reparented by her grandmother and see the juxtaposition of like her being a young girl who is just starting to open up to life, and then her grandmother sort of coming to the end of her life, and potentially how those phases of life can be both similar but very different at the same time. So yeah, this one sounds very intriguing to me and can't wait to get to it. I'm realizing I have a lot of child narrators in this pile, and that isn't normally like me, but apparently I've done that, so who knows. Next, we have one that I have recently hauled, Sweet Lust by Asha Bakic. I know I'm butchering that, I'm so sorry. And this is translated by Jennifer Zobel. And this is translated from the Bosnian. The author is Bosnian but lives in Croatia. And this has 11 stories in it that are sort of dystopian in nature, talking about like past, present, future. And some of the stories are about women who are rehabilitated in an erotic abandoned amusement park. And then there's also one about climate change where there's like massive floodings and warmings in the Balkans, and a man decides to invent a time machine to try and deal with climate change. So yeah, lots of speculative short stories in here, and it says it's talking about human desire and fragility. So yeah, that is Sweet Lust. And then next up, we have another recent one, Mona by Paula Alexarek, translated by Adam Morris from what language? From the Spanish. This is published by Picador, which is FSG. And this follows a writer who is on a downward spiral because of substance abuse, and she gets nominated for a writer prize the like best writer prize in the world. And she goes there to meet the other nominees, and they're all men. And I think this is a take on kind of sexism and misogyny in the publishing industry. So that is Mona. Next, we have First Blood by Amelie Nothomb. This is translated from the French by Alison Anderson and published by Europa Editions. This one follows a narrator who is about to face the firing squad in the Republic of Congo, and then that's like a flash forward, and you go back in his life to see how he got to that point. And it's talking about all of the civil war that has happened in the Congo leading up to this point. And I think this is meant to be a political satire based on what I know of this author. So that is First Blood by Amelie Nothomb. Then we have I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman. This one is translated from the French by Ross Schwartz and published by Vintage. This follows a woman who has just escaped, along with a bunch of other women, an underground bunker where she was being kept captive, and she's entering the modern world for the very first time, and the adjustment period she has to go through around that. So yeah, this one I think is going to be hard hitting, but I've heard great things about it. And then we have A Little Luck by Claudia Pinheiro. This is translated from the Spanish by Frances Riddle and published by Charco Press. This is her latest release to be translated into English from Charco Press, and is another crime novel. It follows a woman who fled from Buenos Aires, where she is from, and has been living in the US, and then for some reason she gets called back there, and she's been avoiding it. I don't think you know why, and she must return, and I think she gets entangled in some not good things that are happening there. And she sort of has to deal with the past that she's been avoiding. I think the secrets unravel over time throughout the novel for the reader, and I've heard great things so far, so I'm very excited to get to this. And then we have Where the Wild Ladies Are. This is by Ayoko Matsuda, and it's translated from the Japanese by Polly Barton. This is published by Soft Skull. And this one is a short story collection that all the stories include ghosts in some way. This is another one of the short story collections that I'm planning to read in October, because Ghosts October, it sounds great. So one of them has a silent house caller who babysits and cleans while a single mother is working out. One has a cheerful lover who visits every night to take a luxurious bath, and more and more and more, all featuring ghosts. So doesn't that sound intriguing? So that is that one. And lastly, we made it. Oh my God. We have The Performance by Claudia Petrucci. This is translated from the Italian by Anne Milano Appel and published by One World Editions. And this follows Georgia, who was a very talented actress, but has sort of had a fall from grace. And she, by happenstance, runs into a previous director that she used to work with. She did theater, so he's a stage director, and he wants to convince her to come back to the stage. So he decides to kind of pair up with her husband and write a script of her perfect life for her to get to act out, because they think that this will bring her back to the stage and to her former glory. They are also both in love with her and trying to vie for her attention and affection as well at the same time. What could go wrong? I think this is going to be a romp, and I'm very excited for whenever I can actually get to that. So that is The Performance, and it has a gorgeous cover. All right, we made it. Oh my gosh, I can't believe we did it. Please let me know what ones you are interested in or what ones you've already read, and tell me in the comments which one you think I should read next. For all the ones that I don't already have plans for, which is the majority of them, I will prioritize whichever one people are shouting out the most, and I will try to read it very soon. Also, let me know the women in translation books that you absolutely love. I always want to put more on my TBR, so this is an ever-growing list. But with that, friends, I will go ahead and see you in the next video. Bye!